generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the latest movie, Abigail. This is the crazy horror movie about a vampire ballerina girl. So we're going to go ahead and give you some of our thoughts without spoilers, give the movie a rating out of 10, and then we are going to talk about the movie in a little bit more detail. This movie is kind of like they don't have a lot of crazy things happening, so we don't have to dive in too much. But anyways, so what did we think about the movie? So going into the movie, I didn't have really any expectations. The movie, I'm not huge on vampire type stuff. I think it takes like a really good, interesting vampire movie to keep my attention. So like there's a Dracula movie that came out a while back with a lot of popular actors. I liked that movie, but um, I never got into Twilight. I never got into like the Van Helsing type movies or anything like that. So I just kind of went in open-minded. I thought the movie was all right. I think it started off decently strong. Like it was pretty interesting at first. But then as it kind of unraveled, there was a couple of things where you just kind of wonder, like, wait a minute, if this happened and it's working this time, how come it's not working with this other one? And then so things kind of get twisted a little bit, where I kind of think that the writers forgot that they, use something in one spot and not another. So there
Yeah,
was,
just to touch on that real quick before you move on to the rest of your thoughts, the inconsistencies in vampire lore drove me crazy. Like, if you're gonna have it, one thing that we know about vampires typically is if you kill the higher up one, anyone they turn into a vampire typically dies too, or at least is not a vampire anymore. Either way. And at one point that happens, but then in a different point it doesn't. And so the inconsistencies just drove me nuts.
yeah, well, okay, well, that might be a spoiler for you. I don't know. But yeah, inconsistencies like that. One thing I also really liked, and it stuck in my head for quite a while after we watched the movie, was the music. I really liked the song that they picked as kind of her theme in a way.
It's
Um,
still stuck in my head.
yeah, I don't know if that's like a public domain, like an actual old piece of music, or if it's something they made for the movie. I don't know, but it feels like it should be an old classical uh piece, like by Bach or Beethoven or anything like that. So I thought they did very well with picking a song that can get kind of stuck in your head and, also has a really nice horror sense to it. Um, I thought the casting was pretty good. They're almost everybody in this movie is at least recognizable from other projects. So I thought that was kind of cool. My favorite character was Peter, which is played by Kevin Durand. He's not in a lot of stuff that I watch, but he's in a couple of things. I just thought his character was the most funny and most, I don't know, interesting out of the group. Some of the more popular people, of course, Angus Cloud, who passed away not too long ago. This is one of his final films that does come out. Giancarlo I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Esposito.
Esposito. I love that guy from The Mandalorian, but I will tell you, and this isn't a spoiler, he's not in the movie very much. He's got maybe 5 minutes of screen time. So that was a little disappointing. The other one, Melissa Barrera, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She plays a character named Joey. She's popular for the Scream movies as of late. And then Sammy, who is played by Catherine Newton. She's also very popular. She just did Lisa Frankenstein. I had almost wondered if these movies were going to be somewhat connected just because they're ridiculous with their horror, but I don't think they are. Um,
Different companies.
yeah. Well, I know the Lisa Frankenstein somewhat had like a connection to the Jennifer's Body movie from back when I was in grade school. And then this movie, people had speculated if it was going to be part of um the Monster Universe by Universal. Don't know if any of that stuff is confirmed, but it had been talked about. Um, so I liked it, but I don't know if it's one I would watch again. So just kind of a shoulder shrug from me.
I think the girl who played Abigail, she's played by, looks like Alicia Ware.
Yeah,
Weir. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But she did a great job,
he
so that
did.
was nice. I feel like some of the line delivery, not necessarily by her, but just the cast in general, some of the line delivery was maybe a little stale or forced. And I think that's more a hit on the writing than it is the acting. For those couple scenarios, it's not like it was a big deal throughout the film. It's just kind of something nitpicky is that some of the lines I feel like they just didn't quite hit right or seemed a little off. Um, Overall, I did like the movie. I typically like vampire movies more than Jeremy, I would say, although a couple of them that you listed, albeit honest, I don't know what they are. I've never heard of them. So I'm not a connoisseur by any means. Um, but I'm very open-minded when it comes to these kinds of films. Um,
You know what's gonna blow your mind? Okay, so we're talking about all these actors. We're like, oh, we saw them from here, and the actresses too. Frank, believe it or not, he is the guy that played Beast in the live action film from Beauty and the Beast.
oh wow.
I did not see that resemblance at all. Granted, he's only human form for like 2 minutes in that movie, but
That's
apparently
pretty cool.
he's in the new Godzilla movie too.
Yeah. And the boy and the heron. Ooh, we still have to see that.
Yeah, we
Anyway, before we get too sidetracked. No, that's pretty cool. I had no idea. Yeah, so thinking about the plot of the movie without trying to give spoilers, I feel like it was pretty predictable. Uh,
I feel like the basis of the movie was in the trailer. Like they're in a house. They're supposed to be um uh watching over this little girl, and then it turns out that she's much more than what they signed up for, kind of a thing.
yeah, I do get that. Let's think about, you know, in terms of like how being a ballerina could help you in like a fight or flight type situation because you're a vampire. I feel like she used her moves uh in a pretty natural way. Like I can see how that helped her fighting style, and so I thought that was interesting to see. I don't know that there's really a whole lot more to add. It was a pretty all right movie. You cool if I just roll into ratings?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was a pretty average film. There wasn't anything that made it seem crazy interesting. I feel like so much of it was predictable or super generic, like the beefcake guy being a beefcake, the little rich girl being a stupid little rich girl.
The things that weren't predictable just they didn't work like
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, and that part drove me nuts. So I I feel like this was a little bit below average. It's like an average movie, but those inconsistencies in vampire lore that it brought it down to a 4 for me. I'm at a 4 for this film. It's an all right movie. It's not terrible. If they had paid attention to um just being consistent with how things work from like a vampire logistics standpoint, Even if it wasn't what we're used to, just having consistency throughout the film, I think that would have bumped it up to at least a 5, but I'm at a 4.
Yeah, I half wonder if maybe there's just something I don't understand about some vampire lore that, fixes the thing that we're gonna talk about in a minute, but um go like the first half of the movie I was kind of around a 6, but then some of the things really didn't start to make sense. And so I was also down in the 4 territory. I don't really think it's that much of an average film. So I think it's slightly below average. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a 4 as well. So a couple of
I
fours from us, and now we are going to jump into some spoilers. So this
just
movie
want to
gets
say, I think it's kind of a bummer that because we saw this movie with my mom, and she also said the beginning of the movie she loved, and then by the time the vampire stuff started happening, that's when it kind of started to go downhill. And I think that's just such a letdown because that's what the whole movie's supposed to be about, and you think that that's when it would reach its peak. And I feel like we're all in agreement that that's when it kind of went downhill. And it's not just that we don't like vampires, because like I like vampires. It's just that's when things started to, or stopped, I guess, stopped making sense. Yeah.
yeah. So the movie like jumps right into things. They don't build up to anything really. It's the from the moment that the film starts, it's right into the heist where our group of kidnappers, so to speak, are going to find Abigail, and they kidnap her and they take her to a house that definitely looks like a rich person probably lives there. And that's where we see Lambert, which is Giancarlo's character, and Lambert is basically saying like, "Hey, I hired you to kidnap this girl and watch over her, and all you gotta do is watch her for 24 hours. I'll come back. You guys will get paid, and then you'll go on your way." And they all work in a professional setting where like they don't say what their names are, they don't say like any of their personal pieces. So like if you like something, that's kind of against their rules because they're trying to make it so you're brought together, you work on this, and then you disperse. You don't know anything about each other, and you move on with your lives. Maybe you see somebody at the grocery store and you give them a little wink or something because you recognize them, but that's about it. But they bring the girl to the house. They put her in a bedroom. There's some character development here where the group is talking to one another, and it's interesting in a way. Dean, who is Angus's character, he's trying to say like, "Oh, I'm a professional. I can read everybody," and he was trying to, say who everybody is, like their background, trying to guess, and he was like completely wrong. Whereas Joey gets up and she basically is able to pick apart who everybody is. You can tell based on their facial reactions. Like they're not confirming it themselves, but like she'll say, "Oh, I think it was to Peter's character, like you had parent problems, you had issues with your dad," and you can just see the reaction on his face, like, "Oh my God, how could you tell?" kind of a thing. So little things like that. Most of the characters are pretty straightforward. She does get to uh, Rickless,
Rickles.
Rickles. They have made up names, so it's kind of a weird name. Rickles,
He called him Don Rickles, and then he just went by Rickles.
gotcha. He didn't get really anything that she spilled about him. She was like, I understand that you have a history and I'm not going to tell anybody, but Semper Fi. Like, she knows that he has that background. And with that background, you can have some, things that you want to keep to yourself. So she chose not to put him on the spot with all that. So, where does this movie start to get moving? Well, Joey goes to check on the girl at one point, and Abigail asks to have the blindfold taken off because it hurts her face, and Joey does it. And they have a little bit of a conversation, and basically Joey promises that she won't let anybody hurt her. They do a little pinky swear, which you can see behind Sarah on her picture there. And so Joey goes back downstairs and she's like, yo, this girl is kind of insinuating that somebody like her dad is going to be of great importance and she's sorry that something's going to happen to us. And so Frank decides to be a little bit more aggressive and goes upstairs, forgets that he's not wearing anything over his face, and,
What?
Abigail doesn't have her cover.
Yeah, he thought she was still blindfolded.
Right. And so he's like covering up his face, kind of like a vampire would. That's kind of funny, like this. And is like he has a gun in her face, tells her to turn around. She doesn't look at him, and he's trying to get some information out of her, and finds out that she is the daughter of I forget the name already.
A
Um,
crime lord.
yeah, a crime lord. And when he goes back downstairs, he's like, "Yo, I'm out because this dude is, crazy." And um, Dean is like, "Oh, it's an urban legend. It's not real." And the group is like, "Oh, he's absolutely real." So they're kind of in like a turmoil of who's gonna stay, who's not, or who's gonna stay, who's gonna go. If they leave, they're gonna give their share to everybody else of the money they're supposed to collect. And um, basically, they end up staying. Nobody leaves. Why? Because the house shuts on them. Like all the windows get shut. The front door gets gated so they can't leave. And so something's going on here. And so they decide to split up, search the house, make sure there's nothing else crazy going on. And this is where some of the killing starts. Um, Dean, yep, Dean, he goes off and he tries to scare Sammy's character. Sammy's watching some cartoons in a bedroom and he's off in the shadows, puts a mask on and scares her. And she gets really mad at him and tells him to go away. And while he's off trying to go away, he gets pulled away, gets his head chopped off. And he's our first victim. So then she goes to go find him and alerts everybody that, hey, he died. And so they're trying to investigate. They're like, oh crap, somebody's in the house. Maybe it's this crime lord. And they decide to investigate further, which eventually our next victim is Rickles. And what I didn't really like about these two deaths is that they were off screen. And I was very concerned about this movie at this point. I was like, I totally get, what is this movie rated? Is this rated R or PG-13? Okay, it's rated
Oh,
R. So
I was gonna say they swore so much in this film, especially the girl, which I was kind of shocked by at first, but I'm like, this has to be R.
I just wanted to double check because if it's R, you don't have to do all these off-screen things. So that's what made me worried at first. But they are the only two that end up being like fully off screen. Um, so Rickles dies, and then I think, oh, this is where we get the little um face off down by the front door. So they're all running away from her. They all meet up downstairs at the front door and they're all trying to do what they can to take her out. And Joey remembers that when they kidnapped her, they stabbed her with some stuff to put her to sleep, and maybe that will do it too. Like put her back to sleep. Like they didn't know she was a vampire before, so they thought she was faking it, but she checked her pulse and everything on the car ride over to this house and said, no, she actually did fall asleep. So they do end up getting her, pinned down and they're stabbing her in the arm and she, falls asleep. In the process, though, one of our characters, Sammy, she gets bit. And so she doesn't know what's going to happen. Peter doesn't get bit, but Abigail he's wearing a cross and she takes the cross off of his neck and like stabs him in the chest. I thought that was kind of ridiculous. Like, how much is he being stabbed by? Like this much? I mean, I get it would still hurt, but
They had just talked about all the things that they would use to hurt it. Like, what do we know about vampires? Garlic,
Oh yeah.
crucifix, stake in the heart, whatever. And so, like, I think Sammy had gotten beaten with the garlic or something like that. Like, she whipped it at her. So then Abigail took the crucifix off of Peter's neck and was stabbing him with it. Like, she was basically toying with them of like, you thought these things would save you. Guess again.
Yeah. When she falls asleep, they put her in the cage and like in the elevator shaft, the picture that I got behind me. And she's trying to, like, when she wakes up, handful of hours later, she's trying to, make a deal with some of them, like, hey, if you let me out, I'll let two of you live. And then they're like, well, we'll let her out and see. We'll just take our chances. And then she goes, okay, deal's off. Now, whoever lets me out, I'll let that person live, and I'll kill all the rest of you. And so Peter takes it upon himself to almost unlock this door, and Joey shoots him in the side, like grazes him with a bullet. And so this is one thing I didn't really think was super believable. So they were both pointing guns at each other, and she shot him, no doubt. And he's like, okay, you can have my gun. And he gives it to her so that they can help clean up his wound. I'm thinking, like, if somebody I did not know just shot me, there's no way I would give them my gun. I don't know about you.
Well, I mean, she already had one gun, so giving her another is not going to do anything. And they had made it a point earlier that he's the stereotypical beefcake airhead. So he doesn't have a whole lot going on upstairs.
Yeah. So they regroup, and they decide to eventually split up.
They're
But
trying at this point, they're trying to look for the control room so they can like reset the security system so they can get out.
right. I don't remember if if the stuff with Peter and Sammy happens first, or if it's um oh, it has to be. Okay, so Frank goes over and he's trying to talk to Abigail about stuff, and she's like, I'll tell you information if you let me out, blah blah blah. Basically boils down to they don't get anywhere with their stuff, and she knocks the door to the elevator down. She just blasted it open. And she attacks him, right?
The door blasts off so hard it knocks him to the ground. It kind of like knocks him out a little bit.
Let's see. So Sammy, remember she got bit. Her and Peter are looking for the door and control room area together, and they go down this hallway. Okay. She well, actually, they all meet up at the library. They decide to split up. Um, what's her face? Sammy like sticks her hand in the light because we find out that the light hurts Abigail. Because when she was fighting with the dude after she blew down the door, her hand got caught in the light and it like exploded her hand, but she heals. She's kind of like Wolverine from X-Men. And so that's what fended her off while they could get away. They ran to the library, and early on in the film, Joey realizes that there is a light from outside that shines through a window into a spot in the library. So if they stand in that little circle, they should be fine, that Abigail can't get to them. So that's when they decide to split up, go find the control room, and when Sammy and Peter are going to find the control room. They go down this hallway, and maybe it's a room. I don't really, couldn't really tell. But on the side there, you could see that there was daylight, and it wasn't boarded up in a way like when the house decided to lock down. It was boarded up where it's just normal boards on the window. So I didn't quite understand why they weren't like, oh, if we just take these boards out, then we can go out the window. I didn't understand that.
To me, it looked like really old school, and by that I mean like movies that have really old homes in them. If you go up in the attic, or not even the attic necessarily, but like instead of, before drywall was a thing, they'd have these really thin boards to kind of separate rooms. I've seen it in, I think I've seen it in, like, the people under the stairs. I may have even seen it in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre games. And maybe in the movies too, I guess I don't know, but I feel like I remember from the games. But just basically thin boards that have slots in between them. And so I'm almost wondering if maybe it was supposed to be another room on the other side, but the light was so bright it looked like daylight.
Yeah.
And this is what made it really confusing, because then you think it's, we saw the daylight from the library. We think we're seeing daylight here, but they're not using that to their advantage. And there was scene after scene after scene in this room, and I kept waiting as each character approached for somebody to open these slats to let the light in, and nothing. Um, and even when uh Sammy turns into a vampire in this room and she's dancing, it almost looks like she's kind of smoky, like as if the light is maybe singeing her a little bit, but not enough that she really does anything about it. Like, I, I don't know. It seemed very strange, especially because not much further into the movie, it seemed like it was dark again, and it didn't seem like enough time had passed for it to go from night to day to night again already. It's very
Yeah.
weird.
So we went to the drive-in, and so we can talk in our car and not bother people. So it was to the point where we were like, okay, it's daylight. And then when Sarah talked about how it shifted to night, I was like, okay, I guess it's nighttime again. Um, yeah, so Sammy turns. I actually thought this was probably one of the cooler parts of the movie. When she turns, she is being controlled by Abigail. So there's some sort of connection there. I don't really know what that is. I don't know that much about vampire lore to understand that. But she's basically a puppet. And so she tries to use her because she kills Peter, and she tries to use her to kill the other two, Joey and Frank. But the two of them pick up that, hey, something's wrong here, and so they turn around and run, and they head back towards the library. And so they get to the library, and right before Sammy is about to like pounce on them, Joey picks up a look like a silver platter kind of a thing, and she reflects the daylight, and then Sammy explodes. So the daylight is definitely an issue there. But it was kind of a cool way to one, I liked the whole like possession type thing, but two, it was cool to see them like reflect the light. That was kind of a cool twist on it. So let's see here. Only Joey and Frank are left, and Abigail, of course. And so a little opening opens in the library, and
One of the bookshelves moves and reveals a door that wasn't there before.
Frank was like, "Do we do it?" And Joey says it's a trap, and he's like, "Well, we're trapped here anyways." And so they decide to go down this little hallway, and it turns out that they were, being baited to go down there because what was his name again? What was his name?
Lambert.
Lambert. Lambert was there this whole time. So, like in the beginning of the movie, when we saw Lambert bring them all here and greet them at the house, we were led to believe that he left, but he never did. He's been in the control room controlling, when the door's shut, and been watching over things. So, what he is saying is that this like crime lord dude, he's trying to get back at him, and because he turned Lambert some time ago into a vampire. And we can tell by his teeth and his eyes that currently he is, in vampire form. And so they're trying to convince them to help him take out this crime lord and Abigail together. Because if he takes out the crime lord, he'll go back to being normal, right? So this is where this stuff gets a little fishy, and this is what made me personally think about like, okay, if you're gonna run with this, you have to run with it, but you don't, so you mess it up. So this is what happens. So Frank decides, screw it, that it seems like they're at a loss anyways, like maybe they're gonna die. What's the worst that can happen if he turns into a vampire and tries to help him out? And so he has Lambert bite him, but Lambert also has him drink his blood. So this is where maybe I don't know enough, but because with Sammy was bit, she turned. It took a little while for her to turn, but with Frank, um, he was bit, but then when he drank the blood, it seemed like it sped up the process a little bit. And so Frank turned into a vampire within a minute. And so they decide to fight back against Lambert. And when they fight back, they stab him, through the chest with a stake, and he dies. So this is what I don't understand. When he died, we had just gone over this conversation where, he wanted to go kill this crime lord, and, in turn, he would have turned back to normal. But when Lambert was killed, Frank stayed a vampire. He never went back. I don't get that.
Well, I don't think Lambert was expecting to turn back to normal if the crime lord was killed. I think he was just wanting to take over the business for themselves. But when Lambert was killed, Frank did not turn back into human and he didn't die. He stayed vampire form, which he then later turns Joey into a vampire because he is a naive new vampire and he wants to use her as his puppet to
Hmm.
play games because it's fun. Why not? Like there's no consequences. Nobody can kill me. I'm a vampire now. And so jumping ahead a little bit, Joey and Abigail end up being able to kill Frank, but when he died, they said that Joey, even though she was bit, would not stay a vampire because Frank died. But yet
Right.
when Lambert died, Frank did stay a vampire, and those two things don't add up.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So that's what really bothered me about this movie is like, you know, like I said in the very beginning, I am not much of a vampire lore type person, but if it's something as simple as that where I can pick it out, it doesn't make any sense, why would I care about vampire lore? You know what I
Well,
mean?
I think it depends on what franchise. They all have their little adjustments as to what things work and what things don't. But what bothers me is that it's not consistent. If you want it to be that if you kill the head, the rest down the chain die, fine. If you want it to be that if you kill the head, the rest down the chain stay vampires, fine. But don't have it be one way for one character and a different way for another character. That's what drove me crazy.
Right. Same. Because I wouldn't say loss of respect, but you mean you lose interest in the movie.
Well, it makes you feel like the writers gave up.
Right. So I don't know. That bothered me a lot. But then, so I thought the movie was going to end right here, and it didn't. So
It
Abigail's
should have.
Abigail's dad is the one that um is the crime lord boss. Don't think he's Dracula. He's called Father in his credits. So even though he kind of seems to be like Dracula, I don't really think he is.
I think because they call the crime lord, they call him by his name at some point.
Is it
I
like
want to say it's like
Lorenzen or something?
Andrew Lazar.
Oh, Lazar. Yeah, Lazar is the name.
Something Lazar. I think it's Andrew Lazar. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, we find out that he has been using Lambert to this whole thing is a setup so that Abigail can play games. She is like hundred she looks like a kid, but she is like hundreds of years old. The father, Lazar, turned her into a vampire a very long time ago, thinking he wanted to be a dad, and he got bored with it. So she's been a vampire for a very long time, and now that just every so often they bring in these people and go through like this whole routine just so she can have fun killing them and eat her dinner.
Yeah, feeding time.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, the thing that bothered me a little bit about this is like the whole movie, they're talking about like how intimidating he is, and I'm thinking like this dude is gonna look like, some crazy crime lord that just by looking at him you're gonna be intimidated. And he walked in, and I thought he kind of looked like a playboy in a way, like he was Batman or something walking in the room
he
with
looked like a
lots of money.
dweeb.
Huh?
He looked like a dweeb.
Yeah, like he didn't look threatening at all. I mean, he opened his mouth and he had sharp teeth. That's scary. But other than that, I feel like Abigail was way more terrifying than he was.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was kind of like a not great way to end the film. That I feel like he shouldn't have even showed up. He should have been just like the people in the movie. The people in the movie were like, he's an urban legend. This is a scary dude. Nobody can confirm if this is this or that. That should have been us as the audience. We should have never seen him. We should have just kind of been in wonder of like, this dude's a crazy dude. He's powerful. Does he exist? Does he not? We don't know. I feel like it should have been left at that.
Well, and even with that, they talk about how crazy scary he is and stuff. And when he comes in, Joey's still there and he's wondering why she's still alive and he's like ready to kill her. And Abigail convinces him not to. And he's just like, oh, okay. Like he just backs off so easily. You'd think that with him being some crazy crime lord, he wouldn't give a crap what she has to say and would just kill Joey right then and there.
Which had kind of made me wonder, like, before that happened, I had half wondered because I had heard that this might be some sort of new Universal monster type movie. Like, are the bad guys gonna win? Is this gonna be some sort of origin story with Abigail where she ends up being the winner and then we move on to something else later on? And it kind of feels that way in a sense. Like, if Joey would have been killed as well, because at this point everybody's dead except for Joey. If Joey would have died, I think it would have been all right. I think it wouldn't have really changed my opinion on the movie, but she did survive. She, left the premises in the car that they took there, and then that was basically the end of the movie. There is no end credit scene or mid credit scene, anything like that. It's just over. So yeah. So you can kind of tell some of the issues we had with the film. We did not like how it was kind of, like Sarah said, there are some continuity issues within the movie itself. And if you're going in there kind of with your brain turned off, maybe you'd enjoy it a little bit more because you're not trying to pick things apart, as logically as we were trying to. But I mean, it's the kind of movie where you kind of see what's going on and you put yourself in that position. You're like, hey, if I were here, what would I be doing? As soon as I saw those boards with, light coming through, especially with the fact that there was at least some sort of concern that, hey, will Sammy turn into a vampire at some point? I think it would have been a little bit smarter of Peter to be aware of that. But again, I know you said he's supposed to be kind of the doof in the group, but I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, they set this movie up with them trying to pin who each other are from like a background standpoint, which makes you as the audience try to think, how realistic is this? Does this make sense for this character? How does this play into the rest of their actions throughout the film? Why is this guy trying to backstab this person? Because there is so much backstabbing and people getting rid of their loyalty for one another and thinking who can I trust and whatnot and second guessing everything. So you as the audience are essentially being trained to look for all these little things that like I don't know how you could turn your brain off and still be able to enjoy this movie because they're setting you up to look for things like that.
I don't know. But It is interesting. I remember, I think it was IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, and I really don't see that. That one's a mystery to me. I'm pretty sure it was IGN. But anyway, so that is our discussion on Abigail. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are trying to do at least 2 movies a month, the weekends that they come out. But I know the summer is going to be packed with movies, so we might have even more. So stay tuned for those. Drop us a like if you like the video, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Abigail. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.